Hey adventurers, so today is going to be my spoiler discussion video, thoughts and discussion video on The Rings of Power episode 3. I didn't get the title for this one, I probably should have, but I don't have it. So this will be very similar to what was happening in my last video last Wednesday, but instead of just the 30 minutes of me talking, or I had like 37 or something like that. It's going to be quite a bit shorter, I think, because I've really already set the stage with everything that I'm saying with everything that I said in that first video. So if you want to know my thoughts, go watch that first video. We'll get into my thoughts on this specific episode. Again, I did do a lot of the thing where anytime I thought of something, I'd stop the video, I'd pause it, and I'd go through and write it down. It was interesting with this one because there were several things that I paused the video for and went and wrote them down. But then there was also several things that as I continued to think about it, so I watched the episode last night and woke up this morning. In between last night and this morning, there was things that I was thinking of that I'd go back and write down. And so those things I incorporated into this as well. And I tried to put them in location of where they were in the episode as well, so that I'm going through the whole episode from the beginning to the end rather than just back and forth jumping all around. So we'll go through just my general thoughts, or we'll go through just the things that I wrote down here, and then I'll probably have some more general thoughts to talk about. So episode 3, and this is spoilers, I already mentioned that, but this will be spoilers. So Numenor looks amazing. Yes, it does look a little bit CGI, but the shots that we get of just the city, they are gorgeous. It looks like Numenor to me, and I really, really like and appreciate that. So there's a line when Galadriel and Halbrand and Elendil technically are approaching Queen Regent Miriel, and she says, "Speak, elf, name thyself." And for some reason the name thyself, the word thyself, didn't work for me. I don't know if it was the way that if it's just the actress, because I don't love that actress for Miriel. She's not an actress that I enjoy watching as it is, so it may just be a little bit of that. But there was also, just for some reason, it felt unnatural in the way that she delivered that line and in the place of it and everything like that. It just, technically it's used correctly, but it just felt unnatural and felt wrong to me. So then, nothing else for a little while. This thing that I've got written down is Revian and the elves' reverence and love of the trees is cool. So we know that they are wood elves. I want to say it's Sindar. They're the elves that live in the trees, very much like Legolas and Thranduil and the realm in Mirkwood, Greenwood the Great. That's the same type of elves as they are, and so they have a love and a reverence for the trees, and the way that they speak about the tree in that episode, and the way that they decide that they don't want to cut down this tree, and that they're not willing to, and that they're gonna fight back against this. They'll put the work in to go around, even though that's a longer and harder process. Seeing that from them was very cool, and it felt very true to the elves to me, very much in nature with who the elves are. Then we get into, so they give them the water and they drink some of I believe his name is Revian drinks the water, gives it to Arondir drinks the water, gives it to Methor drinks, and this is really cool to me. So he drinks. The first two drank and kept a watch on the orcs, because they knew that the orcs are not to be trusted, and they still didn't trust them. So then Methor drinks, and he takes his eyes off the orcs for a split second, and at that moment the orc attacks. It's a very smart move on the orcs' part, because the orcs know for a fact that the elves are better and faster warriors than them and would be able to fight back. So that's a very smart orc move. But also, because of that, it kills Methor, and his death hit surprisingly hard. He's not a major character, we don't really know that much about him, but we meet him in the first episode. He's kind of a little bit antagonistic, but at the same time like a friend to Arondir, and then we don't see him again until he meets him in the pit, and you realize, oh, so they've captured the other elves too. And it does a very good job of making you feel sorry for these elves, and then when they kill Methor, you're like, oh, that hit surprisingly hard. So I liked that. Of course, it's sad to see the elves die. So at some point, I think it's around this time, we go back to Numenor, and Miriel is talking to Elendil, and she basically gives him the job of watching over Galadriel and making sure that she is not causing issues. And so she hands him a sword that I assume is Narsil. It's supposed to be Narsil. And I don't understand why Miriel would be giving Elendil Narsil. That doesn't make sense to me. Maybe that's how it is in the lore, maybe that's where Elendil gets the sword, but I don't think it is. And so that her giving him the sword feels really weird and feels wrong. I'll have to check, or if somebody who's watching this can comment down below and let me know if that's how he got his sword, or if I'm wrong in my thinking there. That would be appreciated. All right, let's see. So then as I was watching through the episode, I just kept thinking, because so earlier in the episode, Farazan is talking to Miriel, and he says, Elendil's it says something along the lines of Elendil's a sea captain, and he has a son who's also in the service or something like that, and I think he has a daughter as well. And that's all that he says. And so my initial thought is, where's Anarion? Because Anarion is just as important as Isildur and Elendil. And so my question was, did they seriously gender swap? And that blatantly goes against Tolkien's lore. I mean, yes, there's other places that they've done that already, but that's like a step too far, in my opinion. Sometimes gender swaps don't bother me. It depends on the character, it depends on the world, but for Tolkien's world, it's almost always going to bother me. So I don't like that. I'll come back to that in a second here. But then, so Galadriel and Elendil go to, I forget what is the Hall of Lore or something like that is what they call it, I think. And they go in there and they have a conversation about Elros and Elrond, and how Galadriel was always closer to his brother, which we already know that. That's a nice tie back to the first couple episodes where Galadriel and Elrond interact. But the thing that I noticed, and there's an image of Elros and Elrond standing, going their separate ways, one as a man and one as an elf. And that's actually an image that there's fan art of, and probably some official art by one of the illustrators who does lots of Tolkien work or something. I know I've seen this image before, but in that image, that the fan art images or whatever these other illustrations are that I've seen, it's the characters look as they should, with Elrond being clean shaven and Elros being clean shaven, because they're both descendants of elves. And this ties into my thought here, and that is the line of Elros doesn't have beards because of their elvish heritage, which is very interesting. And so it's weird, because somehow Círdan has an elf. Somehow Círdan has a beard. He's the only elf to have a beard. But then these humans, technically Aragorn is not supposed to have a beard either, so his forefathers, I guess, shouldn't have had beards either, even Elendil. But I understand why they changed it in the movies. Like, it makes sense, but still, they shouldn't have a beard. And if they wanted to stay close to Tolkien's lore, that's something that they really didn't need to change. I understand why they did it. It's because they wanted to show that Elrond kept the elven. He took the blessing of the Eldar, I believe, and then is what it was called. And then the Elros, his brother, became a human and lived his life as a human. So the way that they chose to visually separate that was to give Elros a beard. Just a little inconsistency in the lore there. Doesn't really bother me that much, just something that I did notice. But then we have a conversation between Elendil and Isildur and Eärien, who is his daughter. I don't remember if Elendil has a daughter. Somebody will have to correct me on that, because I don't remember a daughter that he ever has. It's quite possible that it's there and I just don't know about it or don't remember it. But in that conversation, they do mention that Anarion exists. So I'm glad that Anarion was confirmed. That was a good thing. We'll get more into that a little bit later as I continue down, get to the bottom of my notes that I have taken. Okay, so now we're back to the Arondir storyline with the elves in the pit and the orcs and everything. So Arondir, they get into a big fight with the orcs. It looks cool, lots of cool elvish stuff going on, except that the elves can't fight still. But Arondir gets the axe and runs up the chains. We've seen the images in the trailers a bunch of times, and then he chops down the roof of the whole, whatever it's called, the tunnel that isn't really a tunnel, because there's just light blocking stuff on the top. Anyways, so that scene, it doesn't work. It doesn't matter who you are. Even for an elf, that's a very, very strong chop that you would have to do. You need a very particular type of axe. You need to be very strong and very heavy You need to be able to get a ton of force into that chop in order to, I mean, that was, a log was probably close to that big around, and just one chop split down the middle, knocked everything down. That's not how chopping wood works. And in the Hobbit movies, they do something very similar where the dwarves each, as they're floating down the river, they take one chop at the tree, throw the axe back to the next person takes a chop, and there's like 3 or 4 chops that are taken out of that tree that eventually cause it to collapse. I didn't like it then, I don't like it now. Inconsistency with war, that's what I'm talking about. The warg looks bad. So they introduce a warg and they say, release the warg, or something like that. And then all the orcs disappear and the warg comes running out, and one warg takes down so many different characters, and just like, it's one warg. These are elves. They are supposed to be extremely good fighters because of things like they're super light on their feet. They can dodge, they can move very quickly. And so seeing all these wargs just get these elves get completely owned by one warg, just, I don't like it. And then, so yeah, the warg looks bad. The CGI on the warg doesn't look good at all, in my opinion. But then, so the warg is powerful. Wargs are powerful, but not that powerful. And why is it that only Arondir and Galadriel can fight? So that's the thing. When the warg starts coming after Arondir's like, oh, I can beat this, and so he beats it. And just like, why can he beat it when nobody else could? I don't understand this thing where only the main characters can fight. That's not how it's ever been. Even in the Lord of the Rings movies or the Hobbit movies, everybody is fought. That's the way of the world, is these characters have certain skill level, and none of the, look at even in the second episode where Bronwyn and Theo are fighting an orc. Yeah, the orc nearly destroys them, but they're humans, and they still fought back, and they still won by working together, by being smarter than the orc, essentially. And why is it then that these elves who have trained in battle, trained to fight, why can't they beat one warg? It's just a warg. Like, I understand it's a very powerful wolf dog thingy. I understand that. It still doesn't work for me. I don't understand why only Galadriel can kill the snow troll, everybody else just gets beaten up, and only Arondir can fight a warg, all the other elves just get beaten up. Like, it doesn't make sense. So then the orcs just kind of stand around. There's not even one fighting Arondir at the moment. They're just like standing around letting the characters try to escape. They're just standing there, not fight. Why? They're orcs. They should just mob the elf. Like, I don't understand why they aren't being the fierce warriors that all of them are supposed to be. Okay, so we are now done with my initial thoughts as I was going down through the episode. This is more general thoughts. In my spoiler-free review or spoiler-free reaction or whatever that I put up on Friday, that one has my thoughts, basically, that I liked the Galadriel story, I liked the Arondir story, I didn't like the Harfoot story. So this Harfoot story, the Hobbit stuff, I didn't love most of the Hobbit stuff. I did like the Remembrance Ceremony, and the acting in that scene was really good. So that scene where they're remembering the people that were left that couldn't make it, that didn't make it far enough, I liked that scene. It was a fun scene, or not really a fun scene, but it was an emotional scene. And you could see the actors getting a chance to respond and to act, and that was a good scene. Unfortunately, it doesn't feel like Hobbits because of this other thing. So the whole if you fall behind you get left behind thing, that's part of their culture, doesn't make sense. It seems very brutal for even like these proto-hobbits that they're supposed to be. To me, it doesn't work very well. I don't like it. So pretty much nothing in this Harfoot storyline worked for me, other than this one moment, but even that one moment is tarnished by not making sense with lore of who these people are supposed to be. And I understand that this is a different time. This is thousands of years before the events of the Lord of the Rings and before the hobbits become what we know of as the hobbits. I understand that. It still doesn't work for me. The elves are still lacking an ethereal presence, especially Galadriel. So somehow when she walks out gets off the boat and Port at Numenor and walking through the crowd, all the Numenorians like, is that an elf? Is that an elf? Whoa, that's an elf. And they're like, it's an elf, but there's visually nothing except her ears, and her ears were covered for most of the time, that tell you that she's an elf. Like, there's no visual cues that you can look at and be like, that's elven right there. No ethereal presence, nothing. I don't need a glow to be around the elves at all times. Like, that would look corny. But I need some sort of presence to them, and I just didn't find it here. Who's Halbrand? So, Seeking Stories, a couple days ago, released a video on who he thinks the Stranger is and who he thinks Halbrand is going to be. And one of his theories for Halbrand is that the theory that he has for Halbrand is that he's going to be the Witch King of Angmar. And in many ways that makes sense, especially with this episode, because through this episode you come to the understanding that this guy is a descendant of kings. He is the rightful ruler of the Southlands, or of a kingdom within the Southlands. And because of that, like, I understand, yeah, this guy feels like he could be the Witch King, and I do like that. But at the same time, there's a ton of hints to him being Sauron. So when they're walking through Numenor for the first time, he stops and looks over at the forge. You wouldn't make a character like that stop and look over at the forge. If it was Galadriel, that would make sense because it's the Rings of Power. But because it's just Halbrand, it seems kind of weird unless it's Sauron. And so throughout the rest of the episode, you're going through, and he gets into, we'll start this way. So Sauron is known as the Deceiver. That's his title that he is given. So Halbrand goes and meets goes and basically almost gets in a bar fight with all these Numenorians. And then he convinces them that he's their friend, and he pays for all their drinks, and he makes himself seem friendly, but he steals the crest from one of the guys. And as he's going away, the guys catch him. He beats the crap out of them, kills several of them. Again, blood splatter on the camera, that was unnecessary. But he beats him up, takes him down, just easy as can be. Which again implies, well, he's got training of some sort. Where that's from, I don't know. Could be Witch King type stuff, or him being a descendant of kings type stuff, or it could be him being Sauron type stuff. And so that one could go either way, but then he's imprisoned. And that's an important point, because Sauron was imprisoned on Numenor for a long time, and then he convinced Farazan basically, to allow him to be more active, and he convinced Farazan that he was a friend. And there's a lot of things pointing to him being Sauron, but there's also a lot of things pointing to him not being Sauron. The fact that he's a great metal worker, the fact that he wants to start anew on Numenor, like, there's lots of points pointing to him being Sauron. I'm getting really long-winded. So that's what I'm thinking right now about Farazan. And then the last note that I have is, isn't Isildur older than Anarion? I don't remember for sure which is which, but I know that Isildur is first in line to the throne of Gondor and Arnor. So why does this episode make it seem like Anarion is older when he's not, as far as I can remember? If I'm wrong about this, somebody could correct me. I'd love to know. So let me think, is there anything else that I need to talk about with this episode? I think that's it. I don't know. I think I'm approaching close to 20 minutes footage here. So I'm going to wrap it up there. Hopefully I don't keep going and rambling and talking for a long time like I have been on these. There's lots for me to talk about, and one of the things, so last night before I watched the episode, I found that I was excited to watch the episode. That's a good thing. I didn't know what I was going to think of it. I still don't know what I'm going to think of the show as a whole, but those first two episodes, what they did do is they made me excited to watch this third episode, and I didn't realize that until I was getting ready to go watch the episode. And so that's a very good thing. If they can continue to keep my interest, keep me wanting to come back for more, that's a very good thing. Still doesn't feel completely Tolkienian in all aspects, but I feel like this episode was the strongest episode in terms of storytelling, in terms of Tolkienian likeness, I guess. Just overall, this was a good episode in my opinion. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. This one, I guess if I were to give it a rating, I'd probably give it about an 8. Maybe still 7.5, but somewhere right around that 7-8 area. It's not phenomenal, but it's really solid. And we're starting to see the story that they're trying to tell. So thank you guys for watching an Erudite Adventure. We post videos every Monday and Thursday, and then Wednesdays for adaptation stuff. We will see you guys again soon. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. Stay warm.